What's up, guys? It's Mike the Golf Card Collector here. Exciting news! I'm going to be the guest on Sports Cards Live this Saturday with Jeremy Lee. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, streaming on YouTube. And we're going to be talking everything golf cards, how Live Golf impacted the hobby, how Upper Deck is doing, and golf cards, everything between vintage to modern. I'm sure we'll get into other topics that Jeremy and I are both passionate about, but most importantly, we're going to be giving away a box of 2024 Upper Deck SP Game Used Golf. I'm sure you're going to tune in anyways, but this just gives you a little more incentive to head over to YouTube, tune in live, and when we bring up the giveaway in the show, you just have to enter yourself into the draw through the YouTube comments, and heck, you might win a hobby box. All right, enough about that. Let's get to Fondling Cardboard.
Ridiculous Fondling Cardboard.
What is up? Welcome back to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike Lakusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. And this is an episode that I am fired up about. We are going to be talking community. And I'm not talking your friendly neighborhood garbage cleanup crew. I'm talking the community of sports card collectors that are passionate and enthusiastic about the niche of golf cards. Now, I know some of you listeners aren't necessarily the biggest golf fans, but I think what we're going to talk about today can apply to any niche hobby group. I know Brett McGrath over at Stacking Slabs is a huge wrestling fan, and so there are so many parallels that he and I shared on a past episode where he told me all about the way that Prism release from Panini impacted the professional wrestling card collecting group. And that's, of course, going to be happening with golf cards sometime soon. There's so many other aspects of community that I can't wait to get into. Then we're going to be hitting on Mailbag because there's actually more than usual. So I can't wait to answer your guys' questions. Let's get into it. Last week we covered Bryson DeChambeau and his 5 eras of his legacy and career, and I got a lot of positive feedback about how I broke that down into different eras, and I wanted to carry that structuring kind of format forward into today's episode and just see if we can kind of keep this train going. So I've taken the concept, the topic of niche card collecting community, and I'm going to break it down into 10 different categories that are just some food for thought and how you can contribute and participate in the particular niche that you are passionate about. Number 1, the origins and growth of a community. Golf cards have been around for a long time. In fact, it is one of the only sports alongside baseball that's had sports cards printed in every decade going back to, I believe, the 1870s. So 100 or 15 different decades. But of course, there haven't been communities surrounding those cards for all of that time. It'd be kind of hilarious to think about people from 100 years ago obsessing and cultivating this kind of a hobby. Maybe they did. I don't know. I don't know if there's records to show that. But the golf card communities took some time to evolve. I mean, looking back, we obviously weren't really assembled around the tobacco cards and even the vintage eras around Donruss and Pro Set in the 90s. I think it was really 2001 when Upper Deck released the first modern golf set that really set the hobby ablaze. 2001 Upper Deck Golf with Tiger Woods rookie card. Now, would I say that the community really grew out of that milestone, let's say? Yeah, that was the origins. But I don't think the community really came together until the pandemic and, more importantly, the 2021 Upper Deck golf releases. So, thank you, Upper Deck. Number 2, online and offline spaces. So, going back to 150 years ago when the first golf card was ever printed, there was no Instagram and Facebook groups for golf card collectors to assemble. So obviously, the birth of the internet age has really stimulated the ability to foster these relationships with like-minded niche weirdos like myself, and hopefully some of you who are passionate about a particular niche like golf cards. And without the online community, there were physical spaces for card collectors to assemble. The issue, of course, is that you can't get too niche unless you just coincidentally have a massive, following on a particular subject in a local area. Of course, the thing I can think of is team collectors. So if I think back to my local card shop in Langley, British Columbia, when I collected in the early 2000s, you better believe there was a community of Vancouver Canucks hockey card collectors. Now, when it comes to golf card collecting, we didn't have teams. Of course, now with Live Golf, there's team formats and stuff, but that's really a global kind of thing. There are no local golf teams. There's no way that the golf card niche could have this kind of community that we have today without online and offline spaces. Of course, I'll take this opportunity to remind you of the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group. So if you're not already a member, come join the fun. And of course, you connect with like-minded individuals on Instagram. My page is at The Golf Card Collector and at Fondling Cardboard for this podcast. Of course, there's also so many online facilities to foster these kinds of groups. Other than these social media pages and groups, there's forums, there's specialized websites. Like there's a Ben Hogan collector out there who's dedicated his entire hobby experience to collecting Ben Hogan cards. And he's an entire website dedicated to not only sharing his cards and his journey of collecting Ben Hogan cards, but really curating the Ben Hogan history through the medium of cardboard. Offline, we still have the same card shows and local meetups that have persisted through the sports card hobby for as long as I've been around. I'm sure some of you might have been around before card shows were a popular thing, but those are really important, I would say, for the sports card hobby in general. But when it comes to the niche hobbies, like golf cards, it's hard to get everybody together. And that's why I've been kind of toying with this idea of hosting maybe somewhere beautiful like Banff National Park, maybe doing some kind of golf and golf card meetup. And of course, some of you coming from all around the world might have to bring the families. We'll see. A man can dream. Number 3, community contributions. There are some amazing members in the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group, and I'm not going to give particular shout outs, you know who you are, but people who not only post cards for sale and just try to flip or get rid of whatever dusty collection they have, but people who are just enthusiastic about the niche in general, showing off their cards, asking questions, in search of a particular card, even if it's not all that valuable, looking for something that might inspire someone else and help them make connections. I think that one of the most important parts as a moderator of a space like that is consistent and reoccurring ways of having members connect with each other. And so I've used some of Facebook features to have reoccurring posts weekly. And some examples of that are the welcome post where, I welcome the new members and have a few bullet points of key things for people to remember about, such as the podcast, such as the pools and the fantasy leagues that we run in the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group, and just reminders about whatever's going on. Another example is the weekly wins post where people can share pictures of the cards they've picked up or share some stories or give kudos to another group member who did well for them. And the last kind of reoccurring post that I've been doing is Mailbag, which we'll be getting to a little bit later in this episode, where the community can bring questions to me and I can help you stimulate and stir up some conversation and maybe even seek out some answers for hard questions that you've been able to figure out yourself. Another interesting angle you can think about for community contributions is those people who may be silent. They may just be lurking in the shadows, but who have such notable collections and such rare cards and have kind of put in tireless effort that they are promoting and uplifting the hobby purely by their passion for those cards and the limited posts they may make online or the limited interactions they may have others are typically the strongest, the most, hard-hitting interactions because of their passion and their love for that particular card and the intensity of their collection. And of course, the most obvious community contributions would be content creation, hobby podcasts such as this one, and those of you who just share your cards. Simply posting it on your own Instagram or throwing out a post with a picture in the Facebook group, that is enough in my eyes if everybody were to do it to promote and grow the hobby. Number 4, hobby conversations. Of course, in the format of a podcast, that can be an interview. If I bring somebody on here to share their stories and experiences and lessons and edit it all up to make it into a nice package, that's one thing. And of course, that is a hobby conversation. But I like the idea of avid collectors sharing their experiences, passions, stories, and advice to newcomers, to veterans, whether it's on a public forum like a podcast or all the way to private in your own DMs or in-person conversations and everything in between. So please, 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 if you see somebody trying to reach out, trying to enjoy this hobby in some way, let's be positive and let's have conversations with them to uplift our hobby. Number 5, impact of technology. There is more than just social media that has caused the community surrounding this niche to be possible. There are digital marketplaces. It's probably the biggest one. eBay, PWCC, other auction sites, other, ComC, other websites and ways of collectors connecting with each other or connecting with dealers to transact. This is single-handedly the most important stimulus for a community like ours to exist, because without an online auction house like eBay, we wouldn't be able to find these cards. Could you imagine a world where collectors had to communicate with each other, post on forums, or call local card shops and ask for a specific card, and if they don't have it, move on to the next one in the phone book, calling hundreds of shops or collectors, and trolling around in person at card shows looking for specific golf cards. I mean, if you collected one of the big sports, baseball, basketball, hockey, football, maybe you can find your cards that way. But when it comes to a niche, these communities wouldn't be possible without targeted searching and networking through online marketplaces. Now, of course, there's also social media, as I talked about earlier, but another facet of technology is the actual manufacturing processes. If you look at the way that cards came out of the pack back in the early 1900s, no matter the sport, they were rugged. Like getting a PSA 10 pack pulled was absurd, and nowadays it's just an expectation that card quality is up there. And if there's ever a little ding or print line, we're very critical of the manufacturers. But there's definitely technology, both in how the cards are manufactured and the materials and qualities that the cards are exhibiting themselves, that have really made this hobby more interesting. And that's true across the board, not just in this niche golf card hobby. All right, we are halfway there. Number 6, economic aspects. Now, this is something I don't always like to talk about. Somehow, conversation when it comes to sports cards always ends up being about money, and I just try to fuel passion for the hobby. But of course, even I, buy low, sell high. Like it's what you do when there's money involved in anything. But there are economic aspects to discuss. So obviously, there's this collector versus investor debate that I feel like I kind of concluded with my friend Paul Hickey, but we'll continue having those conversations over time. There is investment potential in sports cards, and how collectors navigate this whole buying and selling of trading cards is up to their unique experience. And for me, I like to hold on to the nostalgic value and get utility value into fondling through my cards. And there's people who just prefer to have cards cycling in and out of their desk and not owning something longer than a month. And to each their own. I've definitely learned that there is no one way to experience the hobby. And however you get fulfillment and enjoy it, as long as it's not at the expense of somebody else's well-being, then that's okay. And when I say at the expense, I don't mean, selling a card while the market price is high and then it plummets in value just because of market factors. I mean, taking advantage of people in an unfair way. So everybody be ethical out there. Number 7, community events. There are major events in card collecting, and one example is the National, which is coming up this summer. I unfortunately won't be attending. I don't know if I'll ever be able to attend just due to my personal circumstances, but there are conventions all around the country, all around the world, and card collectors can congregate, and in fact there can be meetups for particular niches. I'll use Brett McGrath as another example. He organized, alongside some fellow passionate collectors, a group meetup in conjunction with the National while everybody was in town. It wasn't an official event, but it was alongside it in terms of scheduling. And over 100 passionate professional wrestling card collectors congregated, swapped stories, made trades, made sales, and made memories. Now, when I talk about community events, I'm not talking about just your everyday local card show. I'm talking about the kind of event that actually inspires memories, where something exciting could happen. You could say, where was I when that happened? And the example that first pops into my mind is what Fanatics is trying to develop, which some people have been saying is sort of a competitor to the National. They're coming out with an event called, I think it's Fanatics Fan Fest. That's what it's called. And they are taking a different approach. It's not just a gigantic card show. They intentionally bring professional athletes for signings, which has been common at the National and other card shows for a long time. They're taking a step up in the sense of having these celebrities and professional athletes give talks. One example is Wemby, that's Victor Wembanyama, for those of you who aren't super familiar on the NBA and what's happening in basketball, but he's a 7'6" or whatever, he's a ridiculously tall rookie who's just blowing the league out of the water. Of course, his team isn't winning a ton, but he is just the number one prospect in the sport. And there is going to be this public meeting between Wemby and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is the number 2 on the all-time NBA scoring list. LeBron just passed him this season. And it's going to be sort of this moment of, I was there when Wemby met Kareem. Now, bringing it back to golf, the only thing I can think of is golf events, golf tournaments. Now, there's actually been this trend of golf tournaments not allowing people to bring in third-party merchandise for autographs, and it's very disappointing to see because, of course, all trading cards are going to be third-party memorabilia. So if you are trying to get your sports cards signed at tournaments, be careful. Check into the rules ahead of time because you don't want your stuff to get confiscated. If I ever did host some kind of a golf card meetup, I definitely don't think I'd have the pull to bring in any giant golf stars. But if any of you listeners are happen to be playing for the PGA Tour or have big connections in there to some of the stars, heck, let's invite a pro. Oh. Number 8, educational resources. This is similar to the technology aspect that I was talking about before, but education is really a direction for that technology to go. And so, it could be on the format or medium of YouTube videos, blogs, newsletters, YouTube channels, other media dedicated to golf cards, or whatever niche it is that you're part of. But education is hugely important because to be part of a niche, you have to speak the same language. You have to know the history. You have to understand what is important and what is fodder. And nothing bugs me more than when someone who's not familiar with a niche tries to sort of penetrate and take advantage of that niche and say, oh, I found this in my dad's attic and, shoot me offers. And, they kind of are looking for unsuspecting golf card collectors to, buy these on-card autographs for $15, $20 per card, when in reality, they're worth a couple bucks each, or, heck, they might even be forgeries. So to be part of this niche, get to know the history, the hobby history, educate yourself, seek out those resources. There's not a lot out there, and that's honestly one of the reasons that inspired me to start this podcast in the first place. So I hope that you guys learn something when you tune in, and if you don't, shoot me a DM, tell me what I can learn next. Number 9, almost done here. We got stories of passion and dedication. And there are so many anecdotes and passionate collectors out there. The one that always pops into my mind is Tiger Cards Only. Because as a golf fan, I struggle to keep the ship on course, to keep it focused on a particular player or a particular niche. I mean, heck, I collect lanes well outside of golf cards too. I've got an Arizona Coyotes collection for hockey. I've got, Steve Nash collection for basketball, as well as some LeBron and Curry cards. And for F1, I actually got rid of most of my F1 collection, but I still have a really nice Lewis Hamilton card and some McLaren Lando Norris cards. So when I look at Tiger Cards Only page and when I've exchanged messages with him, I really admire the dedication and the commitment to that one athlete. And, without going too deeply into his particular cards, he also has a high-end taste, which also really curates the top end of Tiger card collecting. So kudos to you, Tiger card collector. Sorry, Tiger Cards Only, I mean. Another example that pops into my mind is a YouTuber called Trike415 Sports Cards. And he started making a deal with a collector in Hawaii. And he was so invested in making this deal happen that he hopped on a plane and flew to Hawaii. I know, who in their right mind would want to do that? He shows up, meets the guy at a hotel, and spends the entire visit there, I think he was there for a day or two, sorting and sifting through cards of these giant 3,600 count boxes, and not going to the beach, not enjoying the sun, just hermiting indoors with this crazy sports card hobby that we have. And he's in Hawaii. And he flew there just for those cards. Now, he's got a YouTube video, I forget what it's called. He ended up making the deal, bringing a lot of the cards home. And unfortunately, one of the cards that had the biggest value attached to it within the deal, it turns out that PSA made an error on the label of the card, and they called it like a short print, or they called it the refractor or something like that. But then when you look on the back of the card, it didn't have the serial number or the indication that it was that rare parallel, and it turned out just to be the base variant that was mislabeled. Or heck, maybe there's some funny business. Anyways, although it didn't turn out good for Trike in that particular situation, it was a fine example of his passion and dedication to the card hobby and making that happen. And I know that he's got some awesome examples where things did work out. All right, we're finally there. Number 10, future of the hobby. None of us would be here if we didn't believe in the longevity of the hobby and that the value, the money that we put into these little pieces of cardboard with pictures of athletes on them weren't going to maintain their value and be a collectible for a long time coming. And I personally have always loved sports cards. It's hard to put my finger on it. I mean, when I was at a very vulnerable age when Pokemon was released, and I was at a vulnerable age when certain athletes were demonstrating themselves and teaching me lessons just through their work ethic and what I read about them and heard them say in interviews and witnessed when I watched them playing. Or maybe those are things that will always be around. Maybe tomorrow's collectors, our kids and their kids, will still be inspired by sports to the point of wanting to collect rare mementos to feel closer to the action and to their heroes. Plus, there's an aspect of escapism and impulsivity and all kinds of things that really draw people of a certain personality type to this kind of hobby. And I don't think people with those kind of personality types are going away anytime soon, especially with the amount of screen time that people have these days. So there you go. Trust in the future of the hobby. Now, I do also have an honorable mention, and I didn't add this firmly into the list because I don't have a lot of personal experience with it, but I think it's an amazing thing. And that's charitable and philanthropic efforts. So I've never really created a charity or participated much in a charity, but when terrible things happen, like Keegan Murray's passing or any kind of other important cause that can be supported through a community, I think there is that opportunity for like-minded individuals to get together and help out. Now, a good example actually was from today's episode of Sports Card Nonsense. They had a guest. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he was from PC Sports Cards. And I was just sitting enjoying this nice conversation about eBay and new policies and their consignment services when suddenly, he talked a bit about a charity and dropped the bomb that, his wife had passed away in January. And man, it just froze me in my tracks because it instantly put into perspective, those little arguments that you could have with your partner, those moments of stress when you're trying to work together to juggle kids and work and hobbies and time for yourselves and time to grow your relationship. And that can all be just taken away in an instant. And he has a charity. It's supporting women who are diagnosed with cancer during pregnancy, which his wife was. And I'm not even going to pretend like I know anything about this charity, but this is certainly a reputable person and a reputable source. So if you're interested in helping out with that kind of thing, check out Sports Card Nonsense. Listen to their podcast. It's an awesome show. And on their, I'm sure their Instagram and their Facebook page, they would have a link to this charity. All right, we made it through the 10 aspects of a niche card collecting hobby community. It took a little bit longer than I expected, but I hope that was valuable for you guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. Shoot me a message. Let me know what you thought of that. But now we're going to get into Mailbag. First up from Instagram, we've got Gimme Scarcity, who has a Bryson DeChambeau retro red precious metal gems in his profile picture. And he asked me a question about Bryson DeChambeau. He says, I wonder how the Prism release will affect his card hierarchy. I would assume the 1/1, gold, etc. will vault near or at the top just because of the importance of those cards for other sports. He'll be on the lookout for Bryson cards when they come out. And hopefully it has the Crushers logo on it. That's the only team logo he likes. So, Mr. Gimme Scarcity, I definitely think that the black 1/1 Prism Bryson DeChambeau, and even his gold Prism out of 10, those are definitely going to be near the top. But something that not a lot of people are talking about right now is that Panini produces a lot of amazing sets other than just Prism. So it just depends on which products they're going to be releasing. I forget which high-end product they had already released. It was a nice one. It wasn't kind of one of the key ones that we see in a lot of other sports like National Treasures or Impeccable, but there was a similar kind of high-end set that came out. Now, if Bryson DeChambeau happens to have like a 1/1 patch autograph card from that type of set, something like that could be huge as well. But yes, for those of us who love shiny cardboard, Prism's going to be a big deal. Now, here's a sort of a challenge to Upper Deck. Where is O-Pee-Chee Platinum Golf? I personally believe that if you could have a Bryson DeChambeau or heck any star on a chromium stock set like Prism or like Topps Chrome, or like Upper Deck O-Pee-Chee Platinum, you've already done it in Goodwin Champions. We've got some Platinum cards. In fact, there's already Bryson cards in Goodwin Champions. But if you have a dedicated golf set that's Chromium, that would be more important than Prism. Hot take. I said it. But in the real world where we are now, I'm sorry to say that, those are going to shoot near the top. Prices are going to go up. It's going to bring a lot more attention to our sport and to Bryson, considering everything that Bryson's been doing in the last few months. And it's always a catch-22 when a PC player that we collect does well. It's a mix of emotions. It's elation for the fandom, and it's deflation for our purchasing power. I've been having conversations in the group chat with the Fondling Cardboard fantasy golf card pool participants, and have become sort of friends, and we're chatting about these kinds of things all the time. And Bryson's name has come up a lot recently. And Bryson is doing so well in recent months. His prices are up like crazy, and I'm worried they're going to keep going up. There's always that risk they can come crashing down. So make smart decisions. All right, next up is Richie on Instagram. He says, "Hey brother, I'm getting into the Metal Universe Champions cards, and I had a question for you. What do you think, the red PMG or the Platinum Portrait is more rare of a card?" So this comes down to what is the print run of Platinum Portraits, because we know exactly what the serial numbering is of the retro red PMGs. Now it says it's serial numbered out of 100, but in reality the red's only out of 90, and the first 10 digits are actually green. So if you get a green PMG, it's serial numbered out of 100, but there's only 10 of them. And actually, sidebar, oh man, there was this insane sale that I just can't get out of my mind on eBay. It's for a green PMG. So it was a Tiger Woods 2021 green precious metal gems. And it's not the base green, it's the retro, like the desirable one. And I just happened to be searching through sold listings, and I stumbled upon someone who listed it for $550. $550. Either this is a complete scam, or the seller had no idea what they had. And when I looked through that seller's other listings, thinking, oh my God, they sold that for $550. What kind of deals could I get from this guy? And it was just a whole bunch of multi-sport sets, Metal Universe Champions and Goodwin Champions. So frankly, it just looks like he ripped a bunch of boxes, some cases probably, and just listed stuff for sale. Now, that could have possibly been a $10,000 card or more. I've heard of one selling for $15,000, maybe $20,000. So I've got this mix of feeling because I'm glued to my phone and checking eBay saved searches and listings all the time, just like the rest of you. And I'm shooting myself in the foot for missing them listing that auction in the first place, buy it now listing in the first place, and just feeling complete compassion and devastation for this person who clearly ripped a bunch of boxes and didn't know the actual value of what they got and let it slip through their fingers. So getting back to your question, Richie, the Retro Reds PMGs, there's 90 of them. I tried to look up what the answer would be for these Platinum Portraits and how rare of a card it really is. Didn't get a clear answer. The only thing I could find was actually from a fellow Albertan, member of our Facebook group, Golf Cards and Memorabilia, and that's Pat Bonnet. And Pat said he's tried to find this out as well, and the best answer he got was 25 copies. So based on that, and frankly, that kind of makes sense in my opinion as well, I would say Platinum Portrait's probably more rare of a card. Now, Platinum Portrait and Precious Metal Gems are both inspired by 90s inserts from basketball, football, etc. And so they both are quite iconic. I would say Precious Metal Gems edges it out in terms of hobby folklore. The president and CEO of PSA is Nat Turner, and Nat is known for his complete set of Precious Metal Gems, the originals from the 90s of basketball. Maybe he does football too, I don't know. But he's one of the people who have really elevated that insert set. So there you go. I answered your question in terms of rarity and collectability. And thank you so much, Pat, for helping with the answer. And actually, it looks like Richie submitted another question. A little bit of a research into the answer for this one. So he says, I'm actually in the talks of buying Bryson DeChambeau's SP Exquisite Auto out of 10, which is the gold version. Beautiful card. I own this out of 49. Anyways, he says we're having a tough time valuing the price. So he asked me what my take would be on the price, and I shared a little bit of the process, what my line of thinking is. So at the end of the day, it's tough to say. I mean, it's such a rare card that, a buyer can ask whatever they want for it, and someone can pay whatever they want for it. But frankly, Bryson's prices are quite inflated right now. So, 4 to 5 months from now, I personally think they might be down 20, 30%, which sounds like a lot, but they really did blow up recently. So to value something like that, first you want to look for a sale of the exact card. So look for Bryson DeChambeau Exquisite out of 10 autographs. If you can't find it, then look for similar players in the same sport. So the only other two would be Colin Morikawa or Will Zalatoris. So if there's been any sales of Exquisite Gold out of 10 autographs, you can kind of take their sale for the exact same card and then create a ratio for comps of using Morikawa, for example. If you've seen like a different rare card, like let's say precious metal gems, a Morikawa precious metal gems versus a Bryson DeChambeau precious metal gems, whatever that ratio is, you could then apply that to the exquisite sale of Morikawa to get a rough idea of what the Bryson would sell for. So that's one tactic. Now, if there's no Morikawa or Zalatoris sales, then you can kind of take a shot in the dark, and you can look at other sports and say, is there an exquisite out of 49 for a player that sold relatively recently and around the same time that an exquisite gold out of 10 for that same player has also sold? Now, again, we're working on ratios here. So if one sold for $100 and that's out of 49, and then the out of 10 sold for twice the price or 2.5 the price, then okay, well, Bryson's out of 49 sold for $200-$300. Apply that ratio, it's probably worth between $500 and $700. So that's kind of my backup planning when I'm trying to create a comp. So hopefully that helps you listeners as well. Moving on, we've got Jay Justin, who asked if he should be cracking his Sports Illustrated for Kids Tiger Woods rookie card, which is graded a PSA 8, and if he should be cracking it and resubmitting it, and if so, which grader should he submit it to? Man, that's risky. Like, a PSA 8 is such a good grade. Like, he's sent a bunch of pictures in all the corners of the card, and it looks clean, sure, but you never know how PSA or any other grading company is going to grade a Sports Illustrated for Kids card. I mean, if you send it into resend it into PSA, you could crack it out and hope maybe they give it a 9. It's unlikely to get a 10 if it's an 8. But PSA carries typically the best value in terms of slab and brand recognition and sales. But other options would be to send it, crack it out and send it to SGC or BGS. Now, they likely wouldn't provide the same value, but if instead of a PSA 8, you got an SGC 9 or BGS 9 or better, SGC or BGS 9.5, then it could be an upgrade. But the risk you have is if they happen to grade the exact same thing, SGC 8 or BGS 8, then that would be considered a downgrade. Now, you also have to consider that they grade more than just the corners. And, there's the surface, the edges, the centering. Those can all have flaws that are not as obvious under the naked eye, especially to somebody who's kind of new to this hobby, which I got the impression that Jay Justin is. So just be careful. And also very important to understand is each of those different grading companies has a totally different grading scale that scores different kinds of flaws differently. So you want to scrutinize the card for a long time under different lighting. Look at it at different occasions and at different, when your eyes are feeling different, and look for flaws that can put a regrade at risk. Just don't blindly crack and resubmit. And don't just say it looks clean. scrutinize that thing. Otherwise, you risk. And you risk more than just losing the value. I mean, it's your property and you can do with it whatever you will. But as somebody who loves curating hobby history and hobby collections, it would be kind of a shame to see somebody crack out a card as rare as this PSA 8 Sports Illustrated for Kids Tiger Woods rookie. Don't know what the pop is, but I know it's a rare card. And to see it downgraded in some fashion. So, anyways, good luck. Jay Jason did actually update his post, and it looks like he decided to send it in to BGS. So, there you go. Hoping for a 9.5. All right, moving through the Facebook group mailbag post, we've got Adam Verthaler. Curious to know if you can find the odds on Upper Deck Exclusives Young Gun clear cuts. I can't find the odds anywhere. Pic showing the Homa version. And the pictures are really cool. Max Homa clear cuts Young Gun, and it's the clear cut style, so it's a transparent acetate type card. And it doesn't have a serial number. Really, really cool looking card. Appears to be extremely rare to pull. There's some, on eBay for ridiculous prices. One has sold on eBay, went for $356, so it definitely carries a solid value. And the clear cut Young Guns is a 1 out of 288 odds, but the clear cut Young Gun with the red imprinted with Upper Deck Exclusives on it, that is the one that is, where he's asking about. And it's so hard to find information on it. I mean, there's other people commenting on here. James Peacock tried to chip in. Austin Bailey, is commenting, trying to help him with some research. And those people are far more familiar with this particular set than I am, and nobody can find anything. Now, I did reach out to one of my contacts, or basically my only contact at Upper Deck, and he got back to me and said, it's got to be less than 10. And I was like, holy crap, like, this is a pretty rare card. And then he responded saying, oh, actually, I might be wrong on that. Let me do some research for you. But he also said, if it's not numbered, which it's not, print runs aren't something that they're supposed to be sharing with us. So I don't think we're going to get a real answer. But it sounds like it's very short printed. So awesome card. And speaking of Pat Bonnet from earlier, he actually added a question to the mailbag. He says, is there a market for non-sport golf cards? Example, I Love Lucy or Flintstones. Really interesting question, because I've actually seen that I Love Lucy golf card, and I think that is super cool. It's something that I actually wanted to pick up. Flintstones, never even seen that one, but you've got my attention. That's a show I used to love as a kid, so yeah, I'm going to look into these cards. Is there a market for them? I mean, yeah, of course there's a market for them. The real question is, what is their collectability and, I guess, investability, if that's what matters to you. And that kind of thing always concerns me. You don't want to pay too much money. So, Pat, my advice is, just put a safe search on eBay and keep an eye out for them. Just watch for a few months how much they're selling for. If they're extremely rare and you can't find them anywhere, then you may have to look into some archive prices, like through Card Ladder, or what's that sports card investor app, whatever that thing's called, Market Movers, or even just eBay sold listings, or Terapeak if you have a store on eBay, or whatever. I sometimes use a website called maven.io for old comps, and just get an idea for how these cards sell, and just always try to get a deal. And that's basically my answer. Always try to get a deal. Pat actually asks a second question. He says, how do people place value on multi-sport golf cards? Example, Metal Universe or Gaudi. Now, Gaudi is obviously just a subset within Goodwin Champions. Originally, it was a product of its own, but it's kind of been demoted to being an insert set within Goodwin. And, I don't think the Gaudi brand really carries like a lot of prestige as carried forward from its old standalone product set. But I do think what the value in it is that Upper Deck tests the waters with products with the Gaudi brand on Goodwin, such as Platinum, the chromium style of card. Now, a Platinum Gaudi card is, in my eyes, just as awesome and valuable as the base platinum card. And it actually creates more collectability because with different insert sets within a product with the same parallels, it creates this kind of glue that can hold cards together. And my collection of cosmic parallels is a fine example of that. For Tiger and Morikawa and Bryson and Wolf and all the other golfers in Goodwin Champions, I'm collecting the cosmic base, the cosmic Gaudi, and the cosmic splash of color, and the cosmic whatever the hell else they make. So in my eyes, that's kind of the area where it's collectible. And of course, the lower print run ones like the Emerald Surge or Emerald Wave or whatever out of 10, something like that, Gaudi, base, whatever variation it is, that's going to be collectible and valuable just because it's short printed. Now, when we get into metal, as you referred to it, that's Skybox Metal Universe Champions, which is owned by Upper Deck. That is where it gets really interesting in my eyes because the insert sets within metal are planeswalkers, to use a Magic the Gathering terminology. Those cards cross the lines between different niches, and they carry huge prestige within the mainstream hobby. And so we get a few golfers from Metal Universe Champions every year, and even though it's a multi-sport set, the brand recognition is so important that the precious metal gems, the star rubies, the platinum portraits, and all those other kind of 90s inspired inserts are going to be hugely collectible and have a market for as long as you can imagine. All right, we have time for one more question, and this is from Joe Falconer. By the way, my wife's maiden name was Falconer, spelled differently, but there you go. In your opinion, what is Rory's response to his Pinehurst meltdown at Troon? Does he steal up and contend or not feature at all? I think Rory will play well at the Open. Of course, the British Open, I'm sorry, Joe, I'm calling it British Open for our American and North American listeners, but yeah, the British Open comes out, it's happening next month in July. I think it's mid-July, 13th, 17th, something like that. And, I think he had a meltdown, of course, by missing a putt on 18 that would have forced a playoff with Bryson DeChambeau. But there's some nuance to that situation. And Joe, I know you're probably familiar with all of it, but it was a 2-foot 4-inch putt, but even John Rahm went on record to say that putt was not as easy as it's being made out to be in the media. It was a 2-foot 4-inch putt that needed to be aimed at the outside edge of the hole. Or if you were to try and dump it right in the middle of the hole, you're at risk of running it off the green or 6 feet past. So yes, he should have made the putt. It's also more reasonable than you can imagine that he missed it. And I think Rory will eventually understand that and accept that over these weeks. He's going to get into a good place before the final major of the season. The real question is, when are we going to get more Rory McIlroy cards? Because around 2011 or 2012, maybe up to 2014, he had some pretty cool cards through Upper Deck, and we haven't seen anything since. So Upper Deck, whatever manufacturers will listen, heck, Leaf, make a Rory card. I'd love to have it. Same goes for Ricky and Spieth and a lot of these other popular guys who we just haven't had cards with for a while. All right, that's enough for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you. Make sure that you tune in to the Sports Cards live show on Saturday. That's on YouTube, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Jeremy Lee and I are going to be talking everything golf cards. I can't wait to see you there. And otherwise, I'll see you next week.
Ridiculous golf card collector.